works out. Oh, let me put that here. Okay, so this one, as I said, the document is available. It's the same version I have here. Um, so the fruit of the vine, right, and the work of human hands. If you belong to like the Anglican Church or the Lutheran Church, I think that's one of the things you say during the Mass. Low alcoholic wine, case closed. Yeah, there you go. So interested to see what you found. Yeah, it's hello, Joel Thomas. Good day. Good to see you. So now there is the claim. Now usually it's without the term oinos, right? And I'm probably going to butcher all of these Greek terms. So anyway, there is the claim that oinos in the New Testament, we'll have a look at the Old Testament as well briefly, means grape juice, not wine. I've been told this to my face, right? There is no wine. It's not wine. It's got nothing to do with wine. You're imagining, right? Now, this whole claim, just once you have a look at it, it just falls apart, right? The linguistic and all the other evidence points to fermented wine. In other words, grapes that have been fermented to make wine, the wine. Now, we know, for instance, that Jesus drank and created wine. Now, this is not to say someone's not going to go, yes, you misunderstand those verses. What they actually mean is Coca-Cola. Fine. I mean, yeah, when you show them the verse says A, they're going to go, well, you see, but you don't understand it. You don't have the special understanding that I have. Fine and well. Work of human hands. Well, there's the term, the fruit of the vine and the work of human hands. Like this is when you do the Eucharist. Take this cup. It is the work of human hands, and and the wine. It is the work of human hands. The fruit of the vine and the work of human hands. So the fruit of the vine worked by humans to produce wine, right? And for us, it is the blood of life, right? That's a phrase from the Eucharist Mass, right? So anyway. The work of human hands in the Old Testament was reference to idol worship. Yeah, someone's always got a problem with something, there are people that have a problem for every solution. So anyway, let's see. So the claim that the oinos means grape juice doesn't hold up, as far as I can tell, to any scrutiny. We know that Jesus drank and created wine, as seen in John 2, 1-11's miracle. His very first miracle was turning water into wine. And we look at the Last Supper's symbolism, the blood symbolism, which uses wine. And it is not grape juice. Now, Jews have celebrated and used wine for thousands of years. And for instance, wine flows freely throughout the book of Esther. Now, of course, this is one of those books that Martin Luther stated he really hates the book of Esther. He did write that. That's one of the books he extremely detests. Now, wine, of course, has held significant importance in Jewish culture and rituals, as I said, for thousands of years. It has been used in celebrations, religious ceremonies, and daily life, and it dates back to ancient Israel. And wine, their kosher wine, plays a crucial role in Jewish holidays and religious practice, and it symbolizes freedom and celebration. Now, this misinterpretation, of course, does reflect a bit of a Protestant bias, because I only get this from Protestants who make these claims, right? And you get those who claim it's wine, those who claim it's not wine. Which is it, right? And these, of course, tend to favor abstinence, which to me is another Islamic-like theological drift. Look at the Prohibition era. Now, this didn't just happen in the US. Prohibition wasn't just something that occurred in the US. It was attempted in the Nordic countries, in Canada. So it happened in several places. They tried to enforce it. I mean, it got so far as to changing the US Constitution. Now, ask yourself, where do they ban alcohol? In Western countries or in Saudi Arabia? Which idea does it resemble more? Islam or Christianity as we've known it, or Western European freedoms as we've known them for centuries? It's more like Islam, right? Someone's trying to make this drink haram. Welcome, Tom. Yeah, Jesus didn't create Welch's grape juice. Yeah. Welcome. So again, we've got this idea that aligns more with Islam than it does with Western tradition, right? Now, the key points here, the claim that the New Testament word oinos refers to grape juice, not wine, is, as far as I can tell, just false, right? The linguistic and all the contextual evidence strongly suggests means fermented wine, and we'll discuss that. Jesus drank wine, he created wine, not grape juice. We'll see those passages in the Last Supper. And of course, this is a misinterpretation, right? Influenced by modern Protestant biases that favor abstinence, right? Now, let's look at this claim. So the claim that the New Testament word oinos refers to grape juice, not wine, and that Jesus drank grape juice is not supported by the linguistic evidence, by the contextual evidence, or the historical evidence. The Greek word primarily means fermented wine, as confirmed by the standard lexicon like the BDAG, Bauer, Danker, and Gingrich, which defines it as a beverage made from fermented grape juice. Fermented grape juice gives you wine. In contrast, unfermented grape juice is denoted by the word trux or trax. That's a term that is absent from the New Testament. Oinos, similar to wine. Well, we know. Now, passages like John 2, 1-11, where Jesus turns water into oinos at a wedding and the Last Supper, right? That's Matthew 26, 27-29, where Jesus uses oinos to represent his blood, clearly indicate wine, not grape juice, due to the cultural and textual clues. Now, let's look at some of the contextual evidence. And he said to him, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior wine. You have kept the good wine until now. You've kept the good grape juice until now. Doesn't make sense. So in John 2:10, the master of the feast praises the oinos as superior, noting it was served after the guests had drunk freely, a term implying intoxication, which points to fermented wine. Now, no longer drink only water, but use a little wine for your stomach's sake and your frequent infirmities. That's 1 Timothy 5:23, right? This is where it's advised to use medicine, right? Wine for medicinal purposes, a role historically associated with alcohol's properties, not with grape juice. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Now, I've had people quote me this to say that, that Christianity bans alcohol, right? That's what someone said. Jesus banned alcohol. And I don't know why Jesus made wine, but this doesn't say don't drink at all. This says don't be drunk, right? It doesn't say don't eat. It says don't be a glutton. There's a difference. So Ephesians 5:18 warns against drunkenness with oinos. That also confirms its alcoholic nature. How much grape juice do you have to drink to get drunk? Well, probably all of it and maybe a little bit more, right? Grape juice doesn't make you drunk, right? So if you shouldn't be drunk with grape juice, then grape juice is never going to make you drunk. Why is it warning against drunkenness? So these contexts, combined with the ancient Mediterranean practice of drinking wine for enjoyment, makes the grape juice claim highly implausible. Let's look at welcome, Catherine. So let's look at some theological and historical context. The assertion that oinos means grape juice, okay, that comes from these groups that advocating total abstinence. There's specific groups that really pushed this idea. There are certain groups, especially looking at prohibition in the US, right, and the rest of the countries, where they were trying to literally. Now, I've had someone say, well, it's really just about moderation. No, they were banning it. They were arresting people, throwing them in jail, sending them to court, fining them into oblivion. This wasn't just about moderation. This was about, the Sharia Mutawa police, the morality police coming and arresting you for having a little bit too much fun that involved not drinking grape juice. So, a little bit like Saudi Arabia once more, right? So you've got this Islamic-like rejection of alcohol, okay? So there's this idea of Islamic drift that I have presented previously, right? Where you see within the Reformation a movement away from early church ideas towards clearly Islamic parallels, adopting ideas like iconoclasm, right? And iconism, destroying icons, just like the Muslims do. This is a practice that we know goes back to where the Christians in the 1st and 2nd centuries were making their icons in catacombs to hide them from the authorities, because they would be destroyed by the authorities, by the pagans. But they wanted these icons because that was symbolic of their beliefs. So we know it goes back to very early in Christian history. So teetotalers, yes, yes. Porfirio Santiago de Guzman Jimenez says, this is taking me back to when I was a Seventh-day Adventist. The arguments they made against alcohol and the biblical evidence that Jesus condemned it is laughable. Yeah, thank you. Thanks you, Catherine. So the Bible endorses, now, okay, let's continue. Proverbs 3:16, give strong drink to him who is perishing, uh, not strong grape juice, and wine to those who are bitter of heart. Isaiah 24:9, they shall not drink wine with a song. Strong drink is bitter to those who drink it. Strong drink, wine. They shall not drink wine with a song. So they're sad people. They won't be singing while they drink their wine. Ecclesiastes 9:7, go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. Ephesians 5:18, and do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. So the Bible endorses moderate wine use. You've got Proverbs 31:6-7, Ecclesiastes 9-7, and so on, while condemning drunkenness. So this misinterpretation, again, is a divergence driven by personal opinion, personal preference. It's not driven by Scripture, although, of course, people will happily reinterpret Scripture, put their own meaning onto Scripture. Right? Now, of course, these people are filling gaps left by Sola Scriptura's lack of guidance, because if all you have is the Bible, then you, in theory, if you want to be consistent, have no recourse to history, to tradition, to anything external from the Bible. You have to make decisions based purely on what's in the Bible. And there's a few things that are not necessarily in the Bible, like the word Trinity, right? So, yeah, eat, drink, and be merry. So let me see. Welcome, everyone. All right, so let's have a look at the claim that oinos refers to grape juice. So the claim that the New Testament word oinos refers to unfermented grape juice rather than wine, and that Jesus drank and created grape juice, again, the evidence doesn't support that, right? So let's go. So the Greek word oinos is the primary term for wine in the New Testament. It appears 33 times, apparently, in the King James Version, translated as wine 32 times and winepress once. According to the Standard Greek Lexicon, BDAG, oinos denotes a beverage made from fermented juice of the grape, wine. I actually went and looked up the definition, right? I actually went to look up, you can actually get it online, with no indication of unfermented grape juice. So the term for unfermented grape juice, trux, is not used in the New Testament, right? And I went and looked, there's biblical hermeneutics, right, on Stack Exchange, and there's other sources I was looking at, right? So oinos can refer to unfermented grape juice, right? So yes, it can. Alexa, stop. Sorry. Okay. However, in the New Testament context, oinos consistently aligns with fermented wine. Okay. So you've also got the Hebrew word tirosh, fresh grape juice. But that is not the context that we're looking at. So John 2, 1-11, the wedding at Cana. Jesus turns water into oinos at a wedding in Cana. Only Janice. Okay, welcome, Only Janice. You've changed your name. Okay, so he turns wedding into one at Cana. So the master of the feast praises this, right? And the people have drunk freely. Now, the phrase in the Greek "drunk freely" or Greek "methuo" implies intoxication, obviously suggesting the wine's alcoholic. Intoxication is not associated with grape juice. So the cultural context of a first century Jewish wedding, where wine is a staple, further supports this, right? So here's the result from what would Jesus brew. Notes that the large quantity, 120 to 160 gallons, and the setting indicates fermented wine, not grape juice. Now, the odd thing is that grape juice would spoil without modern preservation, right? Grape juice would spoil without preservation. So you are picking the wine in the fall, right? You're picking the grapes, and then you have the wine only months later in the spring, 6 months later. How do the grapes stay fresh without refrigeration in 2,000 years ago and more? So the Last Supper described Jesus using a cup of oinos to represent his blood. And he says, drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant. The use of the wine in the Passover meal, a Jewish tradition, aligns with wine, right? Unfermented grape juice was not used in such rituals because of rapid spoilage. Yeah, I think so. That was a joke on because Hebrew, yeah. So yeah, Catherine M says unfermented means it will rot within 2 or 3 days without refrigeration. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Okay, so then let me see here. Okay, now Martin Luther, of course, also confirmed wine in these passages is the sacramental element, not grape juice. Now, obviously, Martin Luther, for once, got something right, which is amazing. Okay, a stopped clock can be right twice a day, and he was lucky on this occasion. So he discusses true wine alongside Christ's blood. Right now, of course, the claim ignores this historical and textual evidence because the grapes would ferment, the liquid would ferment. There is no storage for this. So yeah, it had to be fermented, made into wine. The wine would keep for years, right? Other passages reinforce that it means fermented wine, right? No longer drink only water, but use a little wine. So wine has medicinal properties due to alcohol content. Okay, this was well known in antiquity, and grape juice doesn't have this reputation for such medicinal benefits. Ephesians 5:18 says, "Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery." Right? It indicates that oinos is an intoxicating beverage. Again, grape juice doesn't intoxicate. So this is not meant to be like a very detailed, but I really wanted to just get this out there and have you guys think about this, right? So Luke 7:33 to 34 calls Jesus a wine bibber. He calls Jesus a wine bibber, right? Owino potes, or wine drinker. The Greek is owino potes, a wine drinker. Now, that's interesting. I mean, are you going to complain this guy drinks too much grape juice? Look at him dancing on the table. You know, who's that stripping on the table there, throwing their clothes up as they're dancing with grape juice? Like, that's not going to happen. You don't complain that someone's a wine bibber if they're drinking only grape juice and no one gets intoxicated and acts rowdy. So, yeah. So this term would just be nonsense if it referred to grape juice. Clearly, the context refers here to wine, not grape juice. Yeah, they were excellent winemakers. Yep. Yeah, taste buds. Yeah, well, the French. Okay, yeah. So hopefully this kind of makes sense so far. So let's have a look at all of this. I need to move this down. Okay, so of course, Proverbs, we've already covered some of that. Drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already approved what you do. So you have Proverbs 21, okay, verse 1. Wine is a mocker, strong drink a brawler. Does grape juice make you all weird and say things? I've known people drink wine and they start saying very crazy things because that's what wine makes you do. I know people who've drunk alcohol and they start fighting, and other people start crying, and other people start getting happy, and that's what wine does. But grape juice tends to leave people pretty much as it went in. It doesn't change the behavior. Wine does. So yeah, if this is grape juice, it's some really odd grape juice. So this warns against drunkenness. It doesn't prohibit moderate wine consumption. Now in Hebrew, you have the word yayin, wine, and tirosh, new wine. Now, new wine obviously means wine that is still fermenting. It's new, right? It hasn't finished the process. Now, this can sometimes mean unfermented juice in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, all of the context favors fermented wine. Now, this is Strong's lexicon, H3196 for Hebrew 3196, yayin. And the root word is from an unused root meaning to effervesce. So to effervesce, either they're making champagne, sparkling wine, or they're brewing. They're taking the juice and brewing it, making bubbles. That's what they do. And that's how you get the wine. You ferment. Fermentation produces bubbles. There's effervescence. So clearly this is, again, not a reference to grape juice. Catherine says the wine drum is as manufactured as Welch's grape jelly. Well, there you go. Yes. Maybe if the grape juice was spiked with something. Yes, you never know. So let me see. So let's have a look at, in the King James Version, for instance, as this lexicon was telling me, the King James Version uses the word 140 times. And the King James Version translates Strong's H3196 in the following manner. Wine 138 times, banqueting once, and wine bibbers once, right? And the outline of biblical usage, wine. It doesn't say grape juice, doesn't say non-alcoholic, it doesn't say 0%. And then, of course, here the reference is yayin, from an unused root meaning to effervesce, wine as fermented, by implication, intoxication, banqueting, wine bibber. Jesus was a wine bibber. He drank wine. And today my drink is purple, not yellow, because I'm using, what am I drinking today? Yeah, I don't know if it's backwards, but this one is mixed. Oh gosh, it's probably not going to show up unless I hide my face. Mixed berry today. Yeah, there we go. Mixed berry. So let me just have a. Too much grape juice. Catherine says we'll give the drinker diarrhea. We don't want that. So, historical cultural context. So in the ancient Mediterranean, wine was a safer beverage than water, of all things, for the simple reason that its alcohol content killed pathogens. So if you left water around, who knows what would form in the water. So yeah, wine was safer to store. Wine was safer to take on journeys. The Romans used it as well. It was safer to drink. That's why they had beer rather than water. Water could get infected, right? So yeah. Now, grape juice without modern refrigeration or pasteurization would ferment or spoil quickly, making it impractical for regular use, especially at events like weddings or Passover. And don't forget, they would harvest in the fall. Okay, so let's say August, September, October, maybe November, and the wine would be served in the spring, in the summer. That's 6 months later, 7 months later, 8 months later. So yeah, I don't know, how do these grapes keep, right? So the Cana wedding occurred around Passover, which is March, which is months after the grape harvest in September, meaning that only preserved fermented wine would be available. Now, the claim that Jesus used grape juice just ignores this very basic practical reality. So there are theological implications, and again, my whole idea around the Islamic drift. People are trying to make this haram, right? Muslims try to ban wine. Christians don't, but some Christians do, apparently. So the claim that ovinus means grape juice often stems from, again, these Protestant groups, right? And then, of course, you've got my thesis on Islamic drift that I've presented already, discussed, because Islam prohibits alcohol. That's in Quran 590. So by reinterpreting this word ovinus as grape juice, some Protestants want to impose a non-biblical abstinence stance, like Muslims do. Good grief. Filling gaps left by sola scriptura's lack of guidance with a personal or cultural bias, because you're attaching your own opinions to what you're reading. And if the Bible is not explicit or not explicit enough, or you just ignore what it says, you're going to fill in any gaps with your own personal biases, your own personal preferences, right? So we've already discussed Luther's, and I've got a very long talk coming up on Luther as well. I've written like 3 or 4 that I'm busy working on those in quite detail. This one I didn't like really get too detailed on it, but I've got some I've been working on quite extensively on some talks coming up on some historical issues around Luther again. So Luther, of course, as we saw last week, selectively rejected lots of biblical texts. He denied the accuracy, he denied the correctness, he denied the apostolicity of a number of biblical texts. He simply claimed flat out these were not written by apostles. These books do not belong in the Bible. These works are wrong, right? He states that bluntly. I've covered that at length. We looked through the book of Jacob, otherwise known as James, right? The book of James. We looked at that. He detested that book. And while he might have praised it faintly out of one side of his mouth, he was insulting it and demeaning it and demoting it and putting it in the back of his own Bible because he didn't like it, because he was being a complete hypocrite. And he did the same with multiple books of the Bible, as we covered. So he dismissed James for contradicting his theology. Now, this grape juice claim is another similar divergence driven by opinion and faulty exegesis, rather than the scripture's very clear endorsement of wine. It's crazy that, our Methodists and offshoot of Anglicans, as far as I know, yes, it's from John Wesley, and he was a former Anglican priest, and he adopted a certain view, but that view goes back to, I think, the Pietists if I recall, I could be wrong. I could be wrong here, but I was looking at some of that. So he was affected by certain ideas that came along, and it's kind of Gnostic as well, because they speak of like a burning in the bosom and so on. You get these terms that's very much like Calvin. This inner knowing, and it's very Gnostic. There's certain ideas there. So yes, yeah, Methodists under John Wesley branched up from Anglicanism. Yeah. So interestingly, John Welch's grape juice was invented by a Methodist because he wanted grape juice to be used for Holy Communion instead of wine. Well, there you go. Thank you, Janice. That was very interesting. Yeah, that is very interesting news. Sorry, Joel. Sorry, my bad. Joel Thomas. My bad. I was looking at. Thank you, Joel. That's very interesting news. Really interesting to know. Catherine says, we grew Concord grapes as a kid. They're sweet, but still need a ton of sugar. Green grapes are crap for fresh juice, not sweet enough. Yeah, well, we also got to figure what kind of grapes did they have in that part of the world. Yeah, so people make preserves. Exactly, people make preserves because it doesn't keep other ones, right? So let's have a look here. So the assertion that the New Testament refers to grape juice is not supported by the context, by the linguistic evidence, the historical evidence, and all sorts of basic historical realities, like having to make preserves, right? And let me just close that. Now, the standard lexicons all define ovinos as fermented wine, and passages all confirm that Jesus created and drank wine, and people got drunk. And if you read, like I mentioned, some of the deuterocanonicals or apocryphals, depending which side of the debate you're on, or the divide that you're on, then there's a lot of wine drinking going on in the Old Testament as well, right? And it's clearly wine. The Jews made wine. The Jews were using wine, and it's not like the New Covenant says, "And thou shalt abolish wine and only drink grape juice," right? So there is no verse condemning drinking wine, but yes, condemning drunkenness, right? Nothing bans wine, right? They regulate its use, which is consistent with Old Testament endorsements, like in Proverbs. So yeah, again, subjective opinion, and you've got these Islamic type prohibitions that are affecting the interpretation here, right? And I would think we can conclude that this also highlights the insufficiency of Scripture alone without tradition, because then you get all of these crazy conflicting views, right? I don't expect this to be a very long talk, right? But I just wanted to highlight my thoughts on this one. You saw a documentary about a hospitalist monastery somewhere in England. They brewed even stronger beer than what is in store these days. Liquid bread. Yeah, and it was healthy. Yes, they needed it, and also they couldn't necessarily store water reliably because water can get infected. So yes, there's some truth to that. Yeah. Okay. So to wind this down, right? So the Greek word oinos, the primary term for wine in the New Testament, appears 33 times and translated as wine 32 times. Wine press once, right? And the standard lexicon defines it as a beverage made from the juice of the grape, right? Fermented, meaning wine. There's no mention of unfermented juice. The term trux is unfermented juice, and that's absent from the New Testament, right? Now, again, this is interesting. I had to look through this one. They suggest that it can mean unfermented juice, and that's not impossible, right? Citing its use in the Septuagint for Hebrew tirosh, fresh juice, but that's a different category. Fresh juice, freshly pressed grapes, of course, are not going to give you wine. It doesn't happen like that, right? But the New Testament context consistently favors fermented wine, which takes time. Fresh juice is, of course, going to be juice. So, a couple of key passages, right, in the Bible. John 2:10, everyone serves the good wine first. And when people are drunk freely, then the poor wine. And when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now, right? So the terms drink freely and wine imply intoxication. And it indicates, of course, wine, not juice, at a wedding where wine is standard, right? Unless you're at a Muslim wedding, then it's generally speaking not. Matthew 26:27-9, drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. Jesus also uses ovinos in the Last Supper, right? That's a Passover ritual. It is associated with wine, not perishable grape juice. The Jews used wine. 1 Timothy 5:23, no longer drink only water, but use a little wine for the sake of your stomachs and frequent ailments. Wine's medicinal properties, right, suggest alcohol, not grape juice, which lacks those benefits. Ephesians 5:18, do not get drunk with wine. It's talking about getting drunk. How do you get drunk? Water? I'll give you a couple of choices. Fresh milk, a glass of water, wine. Pick one, right? I'll add a fourth one, grape juice. Yeah, well, getting drunk requires wine, for that is debauchery. So drunk and debauchery, right? Drunkenness and debauchery kind of go together, I guess. So this is clearly an intoxicating liquid. It rules out grape juice. It's just kind of obvious on the face of it. And the Son of Man has come eating and drinking. So Luke 7:33-34. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking. And you say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, or wine bibber. That's the term that other translations use. Look at Jesus, a drunkard. Yeah, because drinking too much grape juice made him seriously tipsy and drunk? I guess maybe no, right? And he's a friend of tax collectors and sinners. He's a drunkard, and he hangs out with the bad people. So Jesus as a wine bibber, or we know potis, implies drinking alcoholic wine, definitely not juice. And the word here, potis in the Greek, a wine bibber, given to wine, a wino. Good grief, that's what Strong's lexicon tells me. Strong's lexicon says someone given to wine, a wine bibber, a wino. Winos tend to get drunk on wine. And the word tippler. Tippler, what's a tippler? Someone who drinks too much water? Someone who drinks too much grape juice? No. And a derivative of the alternate. And wine bibber, if we look at Vine's expository dictionary of the New Testament words, right? You can look this up online as well. A wine drinker, ovinos and potes, a drinker, right? So someone who drinks too much grape juice, right? A glutton eats too much food, and a wine bibber drinks too much alcohol. The only monkeys that eat fermented fruit, you're right, and elephants. Looks like they're having a party with hangovers after. Exactly, thank you, very good point. Any fruit from any vine could qualify cooking. Yes, you're right. A Reason Face says any fruit from any vine could qualify for communion. He said, so even watermelon juice would be fine. That is correct. She is 100% correct, because that appears in the book of Second Opinion, chapter 3, line 4. So yes. Why? Anyone for watermelon juice, I will can it myself and send it to you for your next communion. If you guys want to send me, I'll send you an address. You send some money. I'll send you the juice. Okay. Expect a shipment from Amazon any day now. Philip says, anti-wine is anti-Christ. The valid Eucharist is the correct matter, the bread and the wine. Correct form, the words of consecration, and proper intention by the priest with valid orders. And that's fair. Yes. Ignatius Apologetic says the fact that we have to have this discussion is hilarious. I know. I mean, I just kind of threw this together. I didn't like slave over it. Okay, I've got some other ones I'm working on pretty hard, but I just thought this is like really interesting. I mean, honestly, tippler is a tipsy reference. Yeah, tipsy, to be tipsy. Like, you don't get that from tea, you know. Let me see. Drunken Monkeys. Yeah, but that's a great title for a rock band or a movie. A Reason Face it, this is awesome. I was just asking myself this exact question last night. When in the world did people start replacing the wine with juice? I actually ran into a man running a church that taught this. Yeah. So agreed. I've run into it a couple of times recently, and I just thought, yeah. Rory says, Lloyd, have you covered Deuteroscopy 14 verse 26 that disproves the idea that wine is just grape juice in the Holy Bible? I'm doing the New Testament. I'm not doing the Old Testament. So I was really just focused on the New Testament here. Because the whole reference that I was given was just to like the New Testament. I have mentioned the Old Testament a little bit, and I did mention the word in the Old Testament, yayin, which is wine, which is very clearly wine. And the Old Testament books, like if you look, definitely people get drunk, people drink too much, people party. It's all wine-based. Catherine M says, Catherine, I'm not sure where you're getting this logical idea, and I think you're going to hurt people with the facts here, Catherine. And please be very careful with the facts. People could be hurt. She says grapes are a fruit. That sounds dumb, but fresh fruit has a very short shelf life. And I have to admit, Catherine is 100% correct, but people could be harmed by facts like these. We need to consider that people are very sensitive these days. You might tell a man that he's a man and not a woman, and then he'll have a fit and go on TikTok and scream about it. So we need to be careful with the facts, Catherine. Please be careful. Don't confuse people with the facts. That was you. Let me see. Okay, yeah, let me see. Have I missed anything? Yes, another point, which is why it's wild. Protestants say they are restoring communion. Think about it. We can go through a list of, I'm sure we could if you tried. I've covered a couple of dozen different groups that all claim at different points in history that they are restoring the original Christianity. None of them can agree. Not one group agrees what the original apostolic teachings were, what the original apostolic beliefs were, what the original apostolic practices were. Some of these people you've never heard of with random, utterly random names. I mean, seriously, just arbitrary, random Joe Blogs started a church because he had a vision and decided, or whatever, that he was restoring original 100% apostolic Christianity exactly like the apostles did it. And then his buddy in the town next door does the same thing, and they can't agree on what the apostles believed. They all have completely different, irreconcilable, incompatible, contradictory beliefs. And there's dozens and dozens of these names. So yeah, they all are saying they're restoring original Christianity, and they're restoring communion because they have both kinds, bread and wine. But their wine, yeah, okay, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's just incredible. Again, yeah, something like 70% of evangelicals, or nearly 70% of evangelicals, depending on which survey and which group you look at, age groups and so on, something like 2/3 of evangelicals do not believe in the Trinity, do not believe Jesus is God, do not believe Jesus was, they believe he was man, just a born a man, and there is no Trinity. If 70% of evangelicals or 67% of evangelicals believe that, why are we listening to these people? Why are we even giving them the time of day? They need to be laughed out of the room. Yeah, common sense is not common. Emmanuel says, I grew up in an occult Gnostic New Age commune, and even they claim they're restoring the original Christianity. Fantastic. Thank you, Emmanuel. That'll be interesting. We can maybe talk about that. So, guys, on Saturday, I'm doing a talk with someone. I'll set that up soon. So I'll do a talk Saturday evening. I've got someone coming on. We'll talk about that. And then also, I just had, where was she? She was here a moment ago. Yeah. And then A Reasoned Faith, I've invited her on. So we'll probably do in about 10 days or so, 8 to 9 days. I'll have her on. So we're just coordinating the date. A week or a weekend, I'll see what works. So I'll confirm that. So yeah, and then I've got one other person I was planning to bring on, but Emmanuel, I mean, that sounds interesting. If you'd like to come on for a little bit at some point and just talk about that experience, that would be interesting. Rory says, some people are desperate to prove alcohol is a sin in the Bible when it isn't, but I don't drink because I hate the taste, not because it's a sin when it isn't. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't drink very much. I drink very little. And yeah, I mean, I have 2 beers in the fridge. One was given to me as a gift from Brazil. I think it's wine mixed with yerba mate, something different, but it's been there for a month. I'll get around to it. And there's a beer in the fridge that's been there for a while. I'll get around to it. No, there's 3 beers. They've been there for ages. I don't drink very much, so yeah. But I'll get around to it. I mean, I've got alcohol behind me in the shelf that was given as gifts, and I give them away because I don't drink hard alcohol. So yeah, I mean, sure, if I'm out with my friends, I'll have a beer or 2. But yeah, I don't like getting drunk. I don't want to get drunk. I've never been drunk. I've seen too many drunk people to want to join that club. But yeah. So yeah, I would prefer not to be drunk, but yeah, there's no issues with alcohol. And let me see. Yeah, we can. Great stuff, Emmanuel. Let's get in touch. We'll talk about that. Winophobics. So okay, let's finish this one. So wine bibber. So Vine's expository dictionary of the New Testament words, a wine drinker is a drinker. And yeah, so it's definitely a wine drinker, someone who drinks wine and someone who is alcoholic, right? It's a wine bibber. So in the 1st century Mediterranean, wine was safer than water due to alcohol's antibacterial properties. Grape juice would ferment or spoil without preservation, making it impractical for weddings or rituals. In Luther's view, right, he confirms that his reference was for true wine, right? Then, of course, you've got Proverbs, you've got Ecclesiastes, we've covered that already. And then, of course, people twist the verses. So again, Ephesians 5:18 bans alcohol? No, it bans drunkenness. It speaks out against drunkenness. It's not a total prohibition, right? So again, this is just faulty exegesis, or deliberately faulty exegesis, right? And of course, you've got Protestants' divergence, because everyone's interpreting the Bible their own way. Everyone's restoring the original Christianity. There's hundreds of groups that have done that, and none of them can agree on what that looked like. I mean, just on that basis, it's all garbage. And this is my problem. They're making Christianity sound like Islam, because during the Reformation, the reformers started to adopt Islamic ideas. They definitely made their way into Christianity. So, and again, agreed. Hope in Christ says that's the whole fundamental idea. It's okay to drink, but not okay to get drunk. Don't lose control. That will lead you to sin. Fair enough. And Catherine says, Lloyd raised as a Baptist with best friends from huge Catholic family. Wine was a staple for all the kids. I even had wine, but I never told the pastor. Tolerance is real. Yes, great. Let me see if I've missed anything. Finding safe water was a thing till 1930 when they invented water purification. Fantastic, Harry. Great point. So, yeah. So, look, the basic claim that Jesus drank or created grape juice just lacks linguistic, contextual, and historical support. If you go into the Old Testament, you're going to find wine everywhere, not grape juice. The Old Testament, the Jews drank wine. Jesus was a Jew. They drank wine at the culture of the day, right? And the New Testament uses oinos for fermented wine. And yeah, again, you've got just this weird Protestant view that that it's grape juice, which I don't know. It's like, it's more of an assertion, and I mean, yeah, what are you trying to do? Because I mean, they went so far as to change the American Constitution. They went so far as to, remember, this happened in the Nordic countries: Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark. It happened nearly happened in Canada. They tried very hard to ban alcohol. Imagine they banned alcohol, then you're one step closer to Sharia law, right? Why would that be the case? And they would arrest you for it. That's what they do in Muslim countries. So yeah, I just find that very, very odd. So yeah, let me see if I've missed anything. Yes, we have liberty. I like that point. And Reason Face says, so it doesn't matter if they drink grape juice. It doesn't matter if the Bible says wine, but you have to be immersed for baptism. Nothing makes sense. Yeah, no, agreed. It drives me bananas, to be honest. Yeah, it's just completely arbitrary how this is all interpreted. Catherine says, casual wine drinking is a contemporary show of laziness. Wine wasn't a drama queen event in Scripture. It was called life. And a drunkard is an alcoholic today. Yes. Yeah. So, guys, that's it. It's a short one today. But I've got some longer ones. Actually, let me have a look here. I've got some longer ones that I want to talk about. There's this one. So this one I've been working on. I'm basically done with it. But this one is quite detailed. Let me bring this up. So I'm talking about the Sadducees, right? These were the sola scriptura Protestants of Jesus' day. They refused to listen to tradition. They refused to listen to the high priest at that time, the Pharisees. And Jesus said, maybe don't do what the Pharisees do, but listen to what they say, because they have authority. So in other words, they have the right to make theological decisions, right? And these guys refused to listen to tradition. They would only listen to the Bible. They said, no, Bible alone, buddy. Sola scriptura. And Jesus told them, you know not the Bible. Jesus said bluntly to them. He actually tells them, Jesus says, you are wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. So he directly condemned the Sadducees for their sola scriptura approach. These guys were like, sola scriptura, sorry, we don't recognize anyone's authority, and we don't recognize tradition. Sorry, buddy. We've got the Bible. We only listen to the Bible. And Jesus said, you guys are wrong. You don't know the scriptures. You can't know the scriptures only from the scriptures. You need to listen to those who are in authority, who have the tradition. And of course, this takes us directly to the Reformation, and takes us to the two major underpinnings, especially sola scriptura, Bible alone. So the only example of sola scriptura in the New Testament is condemned by Jesus as outright false. He says it is wrong. You don't know the scriptures. right? And Jesus and Mark 12:24 repeats this. Are you not therefore mistaken because you do not know the scriptures nor the power of God? So yeah, there it is. So Jesus basically tells them to get lost. So there's that one. That's fairly lengthy. I've been working on that extensively, and then I've got another one. Um, Questions about sola scriptura. Let me just find that. Oh, this is another one that I'm busy with. My bad. Let me just find it. Give me a second. I just need to go to the folder because I changed all the file names, so it won't load anymore. Here. And there's another one that I'm working on. This is quite lengthy, quite detailed. I've been working on it for a few days now. So this one is on works of the law. Now, what's important here is that when you look at Martin Luther and I listen to Protestant talks, they always, it's works of the law. Romans 3:28, works of the law, works of the law. Works of the law are not all good works. They are a very specific category. So now I'm going to go in depth through this from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there's one scroll in particular that has been discovered that clarifies this because it is the only place in all of ancient literature, which matches exactly what Paul says in the Bible. Paul was a very highly trained Pharisee, right? I believe originally he was next in line to be the high priest. Only he said what he says in his writings, and this the only other place where it's matched is by the Essenes in this particular scroll. So this is something I'm still working on, but this one's fairly lengthy. It's very detailed, and we're going to talk about this. So yeah, I've got these set up for the next few days. And there's another one that I'm busy working on. Let me just find it again. Give me a second. Here we go. Yeah, I'm still busy on this. Here we go. And I'm busy working on this one. 20 questions about sola scriptura that I'm busy working on. Okay. Like, the differences with music and worship, with divorce and remarriage, women in leadership, all of these things. I'm busy working on this one. So I'll get that out as well. Just to ask, like, why all these differences? These are contradictory. These are opposing ideas. They can't all be original apostolic Christianity. Like, so Paul allowed dancing and he didn't allow dancing, and he hated music, but he loved music. He hated wine, but he allowed wine. I don't know. It's all opposites. It's all confusion. So yeah. But as you know, God is not a God of confusion. Therefore, you can be once saved, always saved, and you can lose your salvation. Baptism does not save, but baptism is critical for salvation because God's not a God of confusion. Exactly. So, okay, let me see. The Nazarite for certain drinks. Oh, the Nazarite vow. Interesting. Yes, that is interesting. Yeah. Let me see if I've missed any comments. I always bring the good juice. Well, thank you, Catherine. Um, okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, guys, I think that's it from me.